Station, former Township Commissioner, 2006 to 2018. I'm going to ask you to do what we never did one time in the 12 years that I served as a Township Commissioner. I'm going to ask you to reject the recommendation of Superintendent McGrath for discipline of this officer so that it can be studied further, discussed, and a more appropriate discipline can be selected. I ask you to vote no. I also, this is not why I came here tonight. I came here to present two of the ideas of the NAACP, which I'm also a member, in order to avoid traffic stops, racially discriminatory traffic stops in the future, and to address issues of discipline.
Well, there's also driving by female in this township.
In this room, I apologize. My throat closes up, and suddenly I'm, but I just want to let you know. So I apologize for that, and let me go on. So the first recommendation was to follow the example set in Philadelphia a year ago, which I've sent you 2 articles about, which is to eliminate pretextual stops. This is not a foreign concept to Lower Merion's Police Department. Superintendent McGrath will tell you that they reduced the number of police stops years ago, in part to address for race relations issues. There was a time when officers, there may not have been a quota, but it was something that was considered an advancement, and I think those days are gone. Nevertheless, I believe with many things, it's in with whether to stop is within the individual discretion of a police officer. But what we're asking you to do is to make this more routine and to take a look at more minor stops that don't put the public safety at risk, and study those carefully and see if it's a policy that can be adopted. It's just one of maybe 10 ideas the NAACP had, and they wanted to narrow them to 3 to give you some achievable objectives. The third recommendation was to have an outside independent review. It could be to hire professional reviewers. It could be to have a panel of commissioners and a panel from the public serving as a review board to make recommendations for discipline that may be more appropriate. There is so much pressure on Superintendent McGrath in making his recommendation of punishment in this case. He's already been given a vote of no confidence by 130 or so officers. He's under enormous pressure to please that constituency and to address you in this constituency. I do not know how somebody can make an objective, rational decision when they're under that kind of pressure. It's not just Superintendent McGrath, it's any superintendent. You would get a better result in a narrow group of cases involving use of force where there are complaints about the use of force if you had some kind of an independent panel to do the review. So I'll leave it at that. We don't have all the answers about how it would work, but our suggestion is the panel would make a recommendation, and then the police chief could override the recommendation if the police chief made a separate set of factual findings. The third thing I wanted to talk with you about is the ideas that were left on the table and ignored many years ago. In preparing to talk with you this evening, I found an email. I found the results of a meeting on November 8th, 2015. And it was at a time when we had a community outcry after the snow shovel incident. And we met as a group, commissioners and members of the public, in a very civil setting at Bethel AME Church in Bryn Mawr. And we had a wonderful discussion. And we had magic markers and whatever. We were recording people's comments. And I gathered all of the poster boards and went home and typed them up as best I could. And they ask you now to say, if we had, when you're choosing the next police officer, I understand Superintendent McGrath's time is coming to the end of his tenure. When you're choosing the next police chief, to consider, would we be in a better place in terms of race relations if we had taken these ideas seriously? And I'm just going to read down the list of ideas. Or would they even prevent it the use of force and by Superintendent McGrath's own acknowledgement, the failure of the officer to de-escalate the situation, as is our rules and part of his training. So the number one item in the recommendation, or that was voiced by the public, is officers need to be open to suggestions in a tense situation, especially where one cannot comply, and be willing to adapt to the situation. Number three, the public needs to clearly understand procedures that keep police safe, what to do if you are stopped in a car. How many times I know that Superintendent McGrath has worked with the Race for Peace in a great way to have meetings with members of the public around the region about what to do if you're stopped, and so that citizens, children, school children can learn the police perspective. But how many times have the police gone to Lower Merion schools, to Welsh Valley, to the middle schools, to the high schools, and say, if you're stopped by the police, this is how scary it is for us, and this is what you should do, whether you're stopped on foot or in a car, and open up a dialogue. Number six, police need to view all people as equals. 7, the need to pull people over for small offenses should be explained. I think they might have done that, but it's something important in each instance. 9, utmost importance to treating citizens with respect. 10, police need to carefully explain why you are being stopped. 12, importance of respect, trust, and communication. 13, I grew up with a community police, and we had an interaction with the officer every single day. We need to return to a model where you know your neighborhood police officer. 14, police athletic league on Saturdays, off hours. We knew officers by name. Police come back to the neighborhoods on evenings and weekends. How much of that was done since 2015? 18, how do we help the police build the necessary relationship with the community? 23, diversity within the police department is allowed at the recruitment stage. 27, police need to understand people, especially women at night, feel vulnerable. 28, knowing your officer is important. 29, we need to examine incidents such as the Nathaniel Williams matter to build understanding. That was a guy with a heart condition.
Mr. Wood, I don't mean to interrupt, but we tend to have a 3-minute limit. We've sort of gone over, so if you're in the home stretch, that would be good.
For clarification, I thought the 3-minute limit was public privilege of the floor.
Well, we do have other people who are waiting to speak. That's my
Okay.
understanding.
Rude.
All right. I'll try. I'll move forward. The Nathaniel's incident was a man who was in a heart condition, and he was stopped because he was identified by a black police officer as someone who had possibly committed a robbery. And tasers were held out. Tasers also need to be studied, especially after the taser company came out with a warning saying these aren't as safe as we originally represented them to be. Police are scared too. The public needs to know the protocol for what to do when stopped. Go on. We need to look at the police race relations models in other U.S. cities and suburbs abroad. We need to find examples where police departments are successful in race relations. So I close by saying that these were the items that were put on the table in 2015. It's a long time ago. What has been done? What hasn't been done? What could be done by this police chief? What could be done by the next police chief? The issues are complicated and require fine-tuned solutions. Finally, we'd like to have you think about how we can address better police relations going forward. Perhaps an ongoing meeting with interested commissioners